I'm your host, Janice Matwi, and this is A Sit at the Table. A Sit at the Table delves into the intricacies of professional skills and emotional intelligence, offering insights on how you can thrive in the present and ensure long-term relevance. Serving as a gateway to mastering today's evolving professional and business landscape, our focus is to equip audiences with the necessary tools that ensure they thrive in the present, but also secure enduring relevance in the future. So join us, like and subscribe, A Sit at the Table, only on YouTube.
My name is Kondwelani Mateyo. I work in the healthcare industry. Specifically, I'm a pulmonologist, a consultant pulmonologist at the University Teaching Hospital in Lusaka. So pulmonology is a specialty of internal medicine that deals with the respiratory system. So it deals with anyone with a breathing problem, to put it basically. And what led me to do it really, I have no clear-cut answers why. At the beginning of my medical career, when I was a young doctor, post-internship, I took interest. It was quite a casual interest to start with in what they called the bronchoscopy unit at the time in the University Teaching Hospital. And I stumbled upon this procedure called bronchoscopy where they go into people's lungs and see what's there. And it fascinated me. And what happened to be initially a casual interest turned into something that was quite significant. And it drew interest. And then, if I may extend it further, about a few months later, there's a retired Dutch pulmonologist who was visiting the UTH. And she came into our department and wanted to take people to the Netherlands for a short training in bronchoscopy. So our head of department then said, okay, we can send you somebody who's finished specialty training here. But there's also this young man who's sort of shown a lot of interest, but he's just finished his internship. So he may not be the ideal candidate, but she said, look, if he has the interest, why not? And that's how come we went over for 3 months. And I was in a fully fledged pulmonology department, first ward, top center, among the topmost pulmonology centers in Europe. And it was really fascinating. And I think my interest from then grew. And I made a decision that I wanted to be a pulmonologist at that time. That's a bit of a mouthful, but there's so many principles that have guided my career. It's been a long career to get to this point, and with so many challenges. To start with, of course, I studied my undergraduate degree in medicine at UNZA, and post secondary school, there was a closure at UNZA, and in those days, so we were delayed getting in for about 2 years. And then when we finally got into UNZA, there were 2 or 3 other closures which delayed us. And along the process, I remember we got a lot of taunts from people who were not at UNZA, especially telling us, UNZA is a closure, you'll never get anywhere. Or why don't you just switch career, do something that is shorter? Why do you have to stick to this medicine? And there was a lot of discouragement. But at that time, you had made a decision that you wanted to do this, and you stuck it out. So what am I trying to say in that case is purpose. Is very, very important. When one sets a mind at something, it's important to stick to it, notwithstanding the challenges that they may face along the way. Then secondly, patience is very important. So one had to have tremendous levels of patience to get through the closures. And that's just one part of the story, because the course in itself was very challenging. Yeah. And then, of course, the other thing is one needs to have a philosophy in life, and that's me. So it's guided by a lot of P's. I have started off with patience, the purpose, and there's passion about what one wants to do. And then there's people. You need people around you to mentor you, to encourage you. So you need people around you, be it family, be it friends, be it mentors, whoever. And then the last one is a philosophy. Everyone must have a philosophy in life. It may be built from a religious belief. It could be from Christian principles. It could be from Muslim principles, or it could be any other belief that one has. it's important for one to have that as a guiding principle in life to get them there. So when you put a mix of all these things, I think those are the things that sort of got me to where I am today. The fellowships outside, of course, have exposed you to cutting-edge medicine and to things that are done at that level. But I must say, I cannot talk about the international fellowships I've done without talking about the base, the foundation. And the foundation was very local. And the training we had here, both for my undergraduate and for my initial specialist training in internal medicine here, grounded me very well to such extent that when I went out to do my proper fellowship in the Netherlands in pulmonology, it was sort of a breeze, if I may put it that way, because I had the right principles of medicine here. But that exposure was very important, and it's an exposure that I would encourage for anyone, not just abroad in far lands, but elsewhere. We have a saying is it in Bemba, that umwana oshenda atasha nino kunaya. And it's very, very important for one to go out and experience elsewhere what things people do, how people live, what their approach is, and particularly in centers that have got very cutting-edge science. And so it added a perspective to me in terms of research questions, in terms of building the specialty back home, also in terms of the way things are done. There's a lot that we have to learn from the West. In terms of professionalism, especially simple things like keeping to time, keeping your word, being sincere, being honest when you're dealing with patients, when you're dealing with colleagues and peers. So I think those are the principles that were also added on to whatever foundation I had from here. So it has been very, very important to me. So medicine by nature is more than just a profession. It's a way of life. I once was told by somebody I consider an elder brother when I settled for medicine. He said, you have to sacrifice so much now that you've made this choice. And for sure it is, because it is a way of life. Because medicine is evolving every day. There's so many things coming on, and one cannot afford to not be updated, or else it may be deleterious to the patients they're treating or caring for. So one has to read every day, all the time. That's number one. Then number two, research. And over the past couple of years, maybe I'd say the past 2-3 years or so, I've sort of been pivoting my career from just clinical care and bringing on the research arm of my career. And going forward in the future, I see it being perhaps 50-50 clinical care, taking care of patients, and 50% being in research. And I've done quite a number of research in that regard over the past year or so. And that's one way of keeping at the edge of medicine. And some of this research has been in collaboration with people from outside, from all over the world, and that helps you keep in touch with what's going on elsewhere. So a PhD is another road that is fraught with a lot of ups and downs. And my motivation for doing a PhD, it's been a lifelong dream, but I think my motivation over the past couple of years has changed. So it's got maybe two prongs, some personal, in terms of personal goal, but mostly I'd probably say 70% thinking more of what's the term, of growing my specialty and training others and increasing the research profile of our institution and the country. I'll break it down in a bit when I talk about the second thrust. So I'd set out to do a PhD in France, I think a few years ago. It didn't work out as well as it should have, and so I put the dream aside. And then 2 years ago, I saw an ad at the London School, which is a very top university, especially for postgraduate research in tropical medicine. And I applied for it, and it fit boxes because one, it was with a prestigious school. Then two, I get to do the research back home here. I love being in Zambia. So I didn't need to uplift everything and move abroad to do it. So it meant being here. So it sort of ticked all those boxes, and I applied, and I got the studentship, as it were. But so the 70% I talked about is because I've been for the past couple of years, since I finished my pulmonology in 2017, the only pulmonologist in the country. And when people tell you you're the only one, they say it with a sense of pride. But for me, it's a bit depressing when I hear that, because I say, no, there should be more. And I don't like being called, you're the only one. So from the moment I came back, my goal was to grow and have a lot more pulmonology. So in the first year of getting back, I spoke to a lot of doctors who'd finished the primary specialty is internal medicine before you subspecialize. And I spoke to a number of them, and because I'd come back and people say, yeah, I'm interested, but they'll tell you what you want to hear, not that they were really, really interested. So I got a few, but then they got distracted when something else came on, they moved, and that was fine. But subsequently, I said, let me start mentoring very young doctors and medical students who would be interesting. So I switched the model from attracting those who had already established doctors to medical students or interns. And a few actually showed profound interest in it. And then on began the process of mentoring with them. And as we speak, a number of them are finished, and then they're finishing their primary specialty, which is internal medicine. And we're in the process of looking for places for them to get to go and subspecialize in pulmonology. So why am I talking about this? Because we do not have any local training for pulmonology in here, which is why I had to go out. And therefore the plan was to, in the future, bring the training locally and start a local training program for pulmonology. And that's the whole goal. But one man cannot train alone. I think there was a time when there was a lot of pressure on me for people saying, can you start training? I said, no, there's no way I can train. You need different people to do the training. So to sort of strengthen my ability to teach, because when you're talking about a subspecialty, it's not just clinical care, it's research as well. I felt I needed to do a PhD, and that training will be under the university. And to get a lot more traction in the university, I needed the PhD. So that was the greater motivation in doing the PhD. To do the PhD, finish the PhD, then eventually switch to university, and then start a training program locally for pulmonology. And hoping by the time I'm finishing PhD, would have had 2 or 3 of the first cohort who hopefully this year or next year will go for pulmonology training abroad. By then, they'll probably would also have come back, then we can start a local program. That's a very good question. I think that question should not only be restricted to pulmonology or medicine. People say women are the future. I beg to differ. I say women are the current leaders, and the leaders from yesterday. I mean, the first leaders we come across in life are actually women. It's our mothers who lead the homes and who manage the homes very well. But for some reason, I think culturally and traditionally, we've shunted women outside. But from my personal experience, whenever I've worked with women, all the women I've worked with have been brilliant and been very reliable. And I must say that half my team are actually female, more than half actually. And therefore, we need to talk to the girl child. I think we need to start there, because there are certain cultural tendencies, societal tendencies that sort of relegate the woman to certain roles. It's changing, and it's changed over the years, because when I was growing up, girls were being taught, you're a girl, you can't do math. You're a girl, you can't do science. You're a girl, you can't be an accountant. So, but it's now changing, and I think we need to talk more about it in mentoring the young girls and letting them know that they can be anything they want to be. For indeed, they can be anything they want to be. So I think beyond medicine, this is a word that we need to put out there for the girl child, to say you can do anything that a boy can do, and even more. Medical well-being, generally, speaking for Zambia, it's sort of a by the way. The most times we think about our health is when something has gone wrong. We have our cars, which we religiously take for servicing. Service is due after 5Ks, after 7 5Ks. But we never take ourselves for a maintenance check. So to start with, I think it's important to know what's my baseline state of health, getting into any healthcare facility for a checkup. Then number two, when you talk about physical health, it just doesn't come like that. We have these bodies which we need to take care of. So one is to eat right, one needs to exercise, and that's very, very important, and put it into their regular schedule. Then the other aspect we don't talk about and we cannot talk enough of is mental health. It's shunned upon, and we believe it's for lunatics and whatnot, but I think it's something that we need to talk about in families. From the time we talk to our children, for instance, so many bad energies in homes, the way we scold our children, not to say you cannot, and some of these things have a bearing on how they turn up in the future. So I think that's another aspect we need to talk more about as society, a mental health platform. Moving from the home into the workplace, there are a lot of toxic environments in the workplace. So organizationally, what are we doing to put in place to ensure that our workforce is protected against the toxic effect that may result in mental illness? So I think that is very, very important from an organizational point of view and from an individual point of view in trying to mitigate any negative effects of health, eating right, exercising, taking breaks when one can. If I had to start over, I would do medicine again. My second passion, I remember, I think at some point early on, my first passion was probably mathematics. But when I took on medicine, there was never any going back. And if you had to take me back again, I would do medicine. Medicine is an interface between the science and an art. Many people do not think medicine is an art. But every time I step onto the ward or in the clinic, I deal with people. And you deal with people at the points of needs, various health needs. And that's gratifying. And I take it as a huge privilege that I sit in here and somebody is before me with a problem and they're able to confide and have that hope that I'll help take care of the problem. That's a huge privilege. So that's the art part of it. Then the science, of course, is the science, the research, and the other side of medicine. So there's nothing, for me, for everyone it's all different, but for me, there's nothing that would bring as much gratification as medicine does. It's hard when you're working and you're a team lead and so many responsibilities, and then you take on the role of being a student to find the perfect balance. So that's a constant struggle every day. So one has to really, really be to the point when it comes to scheduling your days, scheduling your hours, scheduling your weeks, your months. I think that's very, very important. It's cardinal. But I have to be deliberate about creating time with family. I have to be deliberate about creating time, doing things that I love. So before I even talk about family, one needs to create time for themselves. So I try to deliberately create time for myself. I run 3 times a week. So I like running in the neighborhood. So I run about 10 kilometers 3 times a week. I love to play golf, though I haven't in the recent past found time for it, but at every opportunity I love to play golf. And one huge passion that's been growing is art. I've had the passion for a long time, but it's growing. So I love attending art exhibitions. I love collecting art, and yeah, so that's something that gives me a lot of relaxation. Business leaders, I'm not an authority when it comes to business, but perhaps when you talk about the business leader, and the most recent book I read that perhaps had the most impact on me from a business perspective is a book by Steve Bartlett. I do not know whether you've heard of him, called Happy Sexy Millionaire. And Steve Bartlett also does a podcast called Diary of a CEO. So I think those are the two that I'll give out in terms of podcasts and in terms of a book for a business leader. I must say I don't read much business books. I would digress and say the past 3-4 years I made a decision. I read quite a lot, and I used to read a lot of Western literature, a lot of it. And then once upon a time I stumbled upon a few books, and I can't remember where I was in Europe, and in a bookshop, and it was an African writer. And it dawned on me that I've read a lot of books from the West, and there's a lot of literature coming out of Africa that we don't read, we hardly talk about. And I made it a personal choice to read everything that's coming out of Africa from a literary sense. And I've been amazed by the richness of the literature coming out of the continent. I think we need to talk more about it. There's so much talent in this continent. So I've been reading a lot of books from the continent. I must mention that Steve Bartlett, actually, the book I mentioned, is got mixed parentage. His father was from the UK, but his mother was from Botswana. So his initial years he spent in Botswana, but writes also very beautifully, and is a budding business leader.